Welcome. Happy Pride. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight and spending your Saturday evening here with us. My name is Molly and I'm the events director here at Listener Magic. We are so excited to celebrate these fantastic debut authors. But before we get into all of that, I just have a few logistics to point out for how tonight's event is going to go. First off, I just want to reiterate that all the ticket proceeds from tonight's event will be donated to Callan Lord, which provides sensitive quality healthcare to New York's LGBTQ+ communities. If you'd like to make an additional donation at any time now or in the future, you can just visit their website. We'll be doing a hand-raised audience Q&A towards the end of the discussion tonight, so please start thinking of questions to ask and hold on to them. After the talk, the authors will be around to sign and personalize books, so just, approach them nicely and it'll be great. We have plenty of additional copies of all of their books available for purchase at the register where you checked in. And lastly, if you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we would love to encourage you to buy a copy of these wonderful authors' books online using the link in the live stream description. So tonight we are highlighting a variety of amazing recent debuts, from page-turning novels to heartfelt memoirs to the wonders of marine biology. These books encapsulate the queer experience in such immersive and personal ways, and we just cannot wait to share them with you and hear more about each and every one of them from the authors themselves. So tonight we have Jenny Fran Davis, who received her MFA from the University of Iowa, where she was an Iowa Arts Fellow, the author of Everything Must Go, a novel for teenagers. She lives in Brooklyn. Tembi Denton Hurst is a staff writer at New York Magazine's The Strategist and has written for Nylon Magazine, Them, and Elle. When she's not writing, Tembi can be found on her couch in Queens, where she lives with her partner and their two cats, Stella and Dakota. Sabrina Imbler, right over there, is a writer and science journalist living in Brooklyn. Their first chapbook, Dyke Geology, was published by Black Lawrence Press. Their essays and reporting have appeared in various publications, including the New York Times, The Atlantic, Catapult, and Sierra, among others. All right, a full-time publicist and part-time writer, Amelia Pazanza currently lives in Brooklyn with her cat. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, BuzzFeed, The Millions, and NPR's Invisibilia. Lesbian Love Story is her first book. And tonight's conversation is moderated by the wonderful John Paul Brommer, who is an author, illustrator, and columnist from rural Oklahoma, currently living in Brooklyn. He runs the popular advice column Ola Papi on Substack. His work has appeared in the Washington Post, Food and Wine, Catapult, and many more, and Ola Papi is his first book. All right, that's all from me. Without any further ado, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to John Paul.
Hi everyone, happy Pride, especially to this dog in particular. Happy Pride to you. Thank you so much for joining us here today on this lovely evening. As was just stated, these are very different books. They cover a wide variety of experiences. We have a lot of different occupations sitting up here. But one thing that brings us all together is that we are debut authors. And so I wanted to start today's conversation with what surprised you about putting a book out into the world? Because for me, I knew in theory I was going to be reviewed, that my book was going to be assigned a series of this many stars from this organization, and someone would have this feeling about it in the New York Times, but when it happened, I was like, I didn't consent to this. I don't remember letting you just say whatever you want to say about me. I would love to hear what about this process, because we're all, first-time published authors, shocked you, surprised you, you didn't expect it, didn't see it coming.
Yeah, do you have an idea of who should go?
Anyone can go.
I'll go. It's so ramshackle. People think it's so much more organized than it is. They think it's so much more seamless. Even though a tour has everything, all of it. It's so opaque still. Even when you're inside of the machine, I feel like it's a lot more opaque than people realize. But then, like I said, it's also just so a bunch of emails. You know what I mean? I think it's the difference between, I'm being a published author and not. It's people responding to your emails in a sense. Instead of cold email, they're tracking you down to be can you write me something for your author note or whatever
Right.
it is. It's like you just go from having feel like you're doing something in a silo to now being beholden to all these different stakeholders in your work.
Yes.
And that is like really interesting and very different. And yeah, it's like so much. It's very much business, and I think that that's like there's nothing romantic about it.
I remember the day my book became real to me. It wasn't the day it was published that I first held it in my hands. It was when the lawyers called to do like the legal check or whatever. You know, like because they do this sometimes where they just want to make sure that if you're writing a nonfiction book, you're not slandering anyone, you're not going to get sued. And the people who called me were like absolute robot lawyers. They were just like, "Hello, congratulations on a beautiful book. Thank you. In a chapter about recapping gay porn." I was like,
Did you have to cut anything?
from that chapter, yes. Yes, there was something. And they were very, very intent on making sure that the names I made up were far enough away from the real people's names, which I thought was very funny.
To disclose the real names. Like they
Yeah,
know.
so they know.
They have like a vault.
It is so safe with them though. Like these people will never crack. I could not get a single emotion out of them, which I appreciated. Out of lawyers who are trying to protect me, I want that for sure. But I remember just having to like recount my gay porn chapter to these lawyers, and I was like, why did I do this? Like, why put myself to this process? And that this is ridiculous. Yeah, that was.
Reminds me of like the Harry Styles SNL sketch where he gets access to the Sarah Lee social media accounts and is like tweeting stuff that sound like they're about gay sex but are also about sweets and snacks from Sarah Lee, and people in like a boardroom are reading these tweets back to him in like a very serious, stern way, and he's just like sitting there giggling. I don't know. That's what I'm imagining this experience was like.
Sometimes it does feel like my book is just this like, you know that one image of like Big Bird in a conference room? Where like Big Bird is just sitting there and there's a bunch of executives sitting around. That's what my book feels like sometimes, where it's just like I brought this silly thing into the world, into this like very corporate environment. Because book publishing, you know, people have fun. They have their book lovers in it, but like the process of putting it out there does feel corporate often.
Yeah.
And so it's just like silly.
Yeah, it's also like shocking when your book becomes a product that people can like rate from 0 to 5 stars. I think that was really surprising to me. And also how little information is shared. It really feels like you've just released a book into a void a lot of times, and it's hard to tell, you know, like are people reading this, liking it, hating it, etc.
I feel a little bit like a wolf. I don't know if you all know this about me, but I work full time in publishing, like in addition to writing. So I feel like I'm like taking all this down in a notebook. And I'm like, how can we be less corporate? How can we like make the process less ramshackle? So it's very. I feel like for me, being a debut author is very funny. Like be on the other side of it and like kind of watch myself like be a diva about things I didn't think that I would be a diva about. Like I think that like I work in publicity, so the publicists that I work with seem to really like expect me to be like, okay, what's happening with so and so? But I think the things that I'm a diva about surprise me. I'm like, oh, I want this page to be laid out differently. Like I think I killed the production. I was like, hello. Here's what I would like to do. And then she's like, Amelia, please stop emailing me because I'm gonna go marry my partner at City Hall today. And I have to turn your book in before.
I really feel that. I was losing my mind. I remember I called them and I was like, the words are too close together. They just are. Like, are you reading this? And they were just like, oh
Did
no.
they change it?
I think they like pretended to.
No,
and I was
Just like zoomed down and they're like,
I was like, it looks so much better now, thank you. That was really bothering me.
I honestly think I could have been more of a diva. I was very
Anything specifically you wish you had like been more of a diva about?
I think just like the way that it was going to be communicated to everybody else, I could have been more of a diva about. I think that like, you know, it's hard. I think also as a debut author, you realize like how hard it is to then advocate for yourself. Like you think like, oh, this is my baby, this is my thing, so I'm going to fight for it. But then when it's like that plus, you know, it's a lot of people want to publish a book, so you kind of feel like I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, there's like certain things that you don't know that you can push back against. And I just didn't know. Like I didn't know that I could say like, oh, I don't like this, or I don't really like how this looks. Like I just kind of was like a lot of exclamation points of like, looks great, thanks. You know.
Yeah.
The only thing I was like pushed back on hard was like the cover. I was like, you gotta be like, let's just be real fucking serious. Like I'm not doing this job. Like,
What was their first?
just figures. And I said like my biggest thing, I was like, if there's a black woman profile on my book, I'm gonna throw it in the trash. I said I don't want a black woman profile on the front of this book. I was like, I'm just not accepting that as an option.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we tried to like bring her like a random black woman in different poses. Like at one point she was like running.
Like it's
And they
not
were like,
a
these three
profile.
poses of her face, you know? And I'm like, this is not a negotiable thing for me.
Yeah.
So that, I think that's like where I was most diva, but I feel like I probably could have been more vocal.
Mhm.
That's so funny because one of my friends whose book came out like a couple of months before, a while before mine, she had been presented like racist covers, and so I, like, as she is an Asian author, and a lot of, those covers were racist. But then I was like, okay, I'm gonna save all of my like clout for this one fight that I need to
No,
have.
literally.
And then the first, so I fought a lot. I fought a lot with the cover. The first option that I had received had a freshwater fish, which my book is about the sea, and it was a koi fish.
No.
And I'm not Japanese, and there is no koi fish in the book. And
Yikes.
also it was a screenshot of someone's thigh tattoo that they had like put like a filter over. And that was when I was like, okay, like if this is where we're starting, like it's gonna be a marathon, so I'm gonna be very direct about what I know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when my publisher was just like, okay, but what if we took his shirt off? I'm like, what do you think this is? Who do you think I am?
It's a little lip slip.
It was very funny being very serious about that because I'm wearing a sombrero, but like, it was just like, I'm absolutely not taking that shirt off.
Yeah.
On the subway on the way here, I was racing trying to get to the end of Yellowface. I don't know if anyone has read it yet. I'm sorry to be recommending a book that's not any of ours, but it's a very hilarious and spot on like parody of the publishing world. And I feel like for me as a debut author whose book came out like 2 weeks ago, I'm finding it very cathartic to read. So I would highly recommend.
It's on the list.
Was there ever a point, like right after your book came out, was there a response that made you feel either like, wow, it was all worth it, or wow, I made a mistake? Either one. Because they both happened to me,
Yeah,
for
it's fine.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, both.
Both, yeah. Do you remember any specific, like, something someone said, someone you know? Because I remember I was so scared. I mean, my book has a lot to do with the small town I'm from, and so I
Oh,
changed the
yeah.
names, but I'm like, there's like 10 of us. Like,
Yeah.
they're gonna know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely the interpersonal drama resulting from like writing a novel based on, to some extent, like real people in real places has been a surprise and a little bit of an obstacle.
Oh, now with the tea.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Well, it's luckily all resolved now. But there was a time when I was like,
Better
why did
time to share.
I even, attempt
this?
this? Yeah. What about you guys?
I think similar to that, like one of the essays in my book is about being half Asian, and like the product of like a white dad and an Asian mom, which is a common half Asian experience. And there's a section where I like kind of describe like my half Asian friends, like their parents, and like the various like levels of like yellow fever that may have been present in those relationships. And I thought I obscured it really well, but then like after one of my very good friends who is a product of one of those marriages talked to me, she was like, am I this one? And I was like, oh my god, like yes, those are your parents. And she was like, excellent, like I knew. And I was like, thank god, like I wanted everyone to be excited about it, and I didn't even think to like run those sections by that.
I mean, being my friend, you're signing up. And I'm like, just be prepared. Like, I'm working on something now, and I was like, I kind of want to write something like a little more racy, like a little sexy, whatever. And I was like, okay, so I'm like now taking people's sex stories. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm facilitating. I'm like, please, like, one and all. Like, I need to know, like, bring me to your bedroom. I need to know what's happening. And they love it. They're delighted because they're just like, which one am I? And if they're left, a lot of them are left out of one body's like, no one's in it explicitly. I'm just like, okay, these like relationship frameworks are similar to this and that. Like, those types of things more than actual
Yeah.
people. But they're like, oh, which one am I? Like, am I in the book? I'm like, none of you guys are in here.
Yeah.
But to that point. I think what made it worth it though is like the people who have reached out to me and be like, to say like, I feel really seen.
Yeah.
That's been really cool.
Yeah.
So like, my book is dedicated to women who look like us, who look like me and love like me. And so to have the feedback of that exact group say like, I feel very seen, this is really me, like you are speaking to a very specific experience that I'm having, or I really feel seen by this has been really, really cool.
Yeah.
That to me makes it worth it. The not worth it thing is like, I'm always refreshing their reads. That shit is not worth it.
No.
Oh my god.
I blocked the page.
Yeah,
Oh, good
that's
idea.
what-
I won't even
yeah.
click that page
Yeah.
open, yeah.
It's just interesting to like hear people's thoughts, so I'm very curious.
Mhm.
But it also is like, it can kind of be a spiral. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the other unhinged things I did was I asked my editor to please go in and find one good Goodreads review and screenshot it for me because I did not want to look at that page. I think of that page as evil. I'm just like, if I open the door even once, it's like inviting the vampire into your house and then I will just
Yeah.
constantly be looking at it, which is like, I refuse.
Mhm.
It's It's not good. Yeah, I remember one response I didn't expect. I guess I forget that I'm just putting my business out here, but I have this chapter where I'm in Austin and I meet this older guy and he makes me a Negroni and I drink it in the book and I'm like, oh, and I really didn't like it. Okay, one of my best friends here in New York was like, hey, so I just read your book. I was like, oh, cool. And he was like, that one time I made you a Negroni and you pretended to like it. And like the text was just like this long. Like, do you hate Negronis? Did you pretend to like it just for me? Like, what's going on there? And I was like, I'm not thinking of stuff like that.
Was there any feedback about the rest of the book, or like really was it fixated?
He was just very fixated on
So there's like
it.
no,
It's
you
just
know,
like, yeah.
ability to take in the rest
Yeah.
of the
It
book.
is funny what people get fixated on and sort
Yeah.
of project their own sort of relationships with you, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of scary because you can't really predict a lot of it, and then
Right.
suddenly someone's mad at you for.
It's funny because I never expected, but I do that with other people's books. Like I'll
Totally,
read
yeah.
someone else's book and I'll really hone in on this one detail
Mhm.
about like this one thing they ate, and I'm just like, oh wow, I know what that thing is, and I think
Mhm.
we've created this like bond together, but they're probably not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
I just remembered, I think the most gratifying moment for me, like post-publication, was when I received a screenshot from my editor or like a photo of someone who was at a bar reading my book alone and then tore out like the title page and wrote her number on it for someone else and was like, call me and like you can, like I'll give the book to you after I read it. And I was like,
wow.
did I facilitate love? And then I later met the person and they didn't hook up. Because one of them was in a relationship, like that's totally fair. But
That's so cool.
yeah, but in a different universe, like maybe two people smooch. That'd be great. Yeah.
Something like that should happen to me. All I got was like this one reading where this one woman came up. She was like, "I'm a lesbian life coach and I can teach you how to manifest things." I was just
Oh my
like,
god.
Wow.
I would like to meet this
yeah,
person.
I was like, I should have been like, yeah, absolutely.
What are you trying to manifest?
I don't know, but I'm like kind of also curious what this person is trying to manifest, or like what people
Yeah,
ask her
I should have
for
said
most
yes, but
frequently,
she
like-
did really frighten me in person. She had like an aura that was just like, you've killed someone.
Bad
Yeah.
Wait, I'm really curious hearing you all talk about the responses to your book. Can we just take a second for everyone to like say what their book is
Yes,
about?
absolutely.
I mean, I feel like I know, but they're like when you're like, oh, people like say that like really resonate with them. I'm like, what really resonated with them?
Go to the line.
Also, okay, my book is Dead Cat, and it is about a gay friend group that goes upstate together, and it's a younger couple and then a very like cloudy couple and then an older wealthy couple, and tensions and drama, gossip.
Gossip. My book is How Far the Light Reaches, and it's 10 essays that mix memoir and also profiles of different sea creatures, many of which live in the deep ocean. And then there are some gay parts as well. On behalf of me, not the sea creatures.
Gay sea creatures.
Yeah.
None of which are coy.
None of them.
So my book is Homebodies, which is a kind of like black girl loses her job, life falls apart, trying to figure out her identity, trying to figure out who she is in relationship to herself, like outside of work, and like the sacrifices we make when we identify ourselves with work, and the personal consequences of speaking truth to power. So yeah, and she is also lesbian, so I was like, why would I make her anything else?
My book, Lesbian Love Story, is sort of my search for lesbian heroes and role models throughout history, and so I sort of settled on 7 different couples throughout the 20th century, and a couple like kind of loosely. By the end, I'm like, friends are a couple. Or, like people doing like political actions together are, you know, like comrades.
People in the grocery store line.
Well, because it is Pride, I would love to ask, why was it important for you to incorporate queerness into your book?
I just didn't have another option. Like, and I'm always going to be writing about black lesbian women. That's the only thing I'm interested in. And so for me, like, I was like, I live in a world where like men are not really relevant to me, and that's fine. And I'm like, I wanted to write a book where the men were not really relevant to her, because I'm like, that's just my real reality. And so I was like, she's gonna be queer, because like, again, like I didn't feel like there was anything else for me to have her be. It felt dishonest, and I feel like even in fiction, I want to tell the truth. And so it was important for me to have the character reflect my reality in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it seemed like really both obvious and kind of like impossible, like inevitable, I guess, to have the book be about gay people just because they are my whole life. And yeah, I think particularly like in a novel, I was really interested in like thinking about like relationships and intimacy and like I don't know anything about like straight intimacy or relationships, so yeah, like there would be a real dishonesty to sort of try to capture that, and also it's more interesting to write about gay people.
Word. Yeah, I guess my book is a memoir, so it would have been weird if but I think, I wrote the book. I love the ocean so much, and I think that I feel very seen in certain ways that sea creatures like live their lives, because the ocean is, or the animal kingdom is like a very gay place. And I think I was hoping that like anyone who was gay reading my book, like who had maybe never like looked to the ocean or to like strange gelatinous things that wash up on beaches, like, and felt like community with them, I was hoping that maybe this book would invite them to do that.
Absolutely. And I do have a deep community, actually.
With
strange gelatinous things on the beach, yeah, absolutely.
I really love this refrain of like, what else would I have written about? I feel that too, and like, I think I've always been interested in writing, and I feel like I was never able to like write a full book until I was like so obsessed with something that I like didn't lose interest or like put it down. And I was like, wow, like I think queerness is the only thing right now that is like that interesting to me, or like queerness is a part of whatever is that interesting to me. Like I think if I was trying to write like about some straight people and their intimacy, I would lose interest. And I think the reader would sense that and follow.
I think I would still write straight people in a very gay way.
Yeah.
I was like,
say more.
No.
It's interesting because I feel like because queerness is so baked into her character, like it's like not inherently interesting to me. Like it's like okay, like yeah.
Right.
I don't know. It's just very ordinary. Like it's ordinary in the sense that that's like her, like the mundane for her is queer.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted that to be her constant reality. Like there's no kind of like back and forth or hemming and hawing about like this, or she doesn't even sit there and deeply contemplate it. Like there's no contemplation in that. She doesn't come out in the book like that. It was kind of
I
important
love
for me
none
to.
of these are
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, but to that point though, it's like I think that there's so much fixation on like how queerness exists in relation to like straight people or heterosexuality, and so I didn't want there to be any like contemplation of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's funny, like in writing this book, sometimes I forget that there would be like straight people reading it, and so I would get emails sometimes like, "Oh, I'm like a straight mom from Minnesota, but I love your book." I'm just like, okay, that's not like a contradiction, really. But I'm like, cool. I like to imagine certain people reading it being like, "Grindr, Scruff, like what are those?"
Google.
Yeah. So I would love to touch briefly on who some of your influences are, whether they're queer or not. Who are some of your literary heroes that really like made you feel that writing a book was possible for you?
Well, I think Tamora Pierce is one of my, like, I think was the author who first made me want to write. I read all of, like, Tamora Pierce writes these incredible, like, young adult novels about ladies who fight, or ladies who, like, disguise themselves as knights to make it through the, like, the bureaucracy of becoming a knight in Tortall, which is the kingdom where all of these stories take place. And I think I initially wanted to write those stories. Like I wanted to write like fantasy books that like empowered people who like have swords and use them a lot. Yeah. But I think I don't know. Like that was I think my first like literary influence, and then I think the book that I returned to the most when I was writing my book is Time is the Thing a Body Moves Through by T. Clutch Fleischman, which is this gorgeous book-length essay that is very, I think, inventive and exploratory in form, and like I think I appreciated that book like took everything in the world as a text. Like you could go to an art show and like be reading like a particular installation into that book. They also weave in the life of the public universal friend, which was like this genderless prophet from like the 1700s in New York and like the Northeast, and they weave that into the text as well. Like, I think it just is, it sort of like took everything in life as something that could be included and could be read, and I think that sort of liberated me to be like, why not read a goldfish in that way, or like look at a gelatinous blob.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Alice Walker is a big one. I think that The Color Purple was transformative to me. It's a very lesbian book, and I think a lot of what she's doing there is queerness as a site of freedom and queerness as a site of liberation, because it's through Celia's relationship with Shug that she finds her with herself. And this idea of them being each other's mirror was really important to me, and then also the thing that motivates her most like deeply is trying to find her sister. So there's like more like just female like relationship and familial relationship, and I love it. And so that was really, really big for me. And then Zorna Hurston as well, because she's Zorna Hurston, and Toni Morrison because she's Toni Morrison, and Nicole Dennis Ben because she's Nicole Dennis Ben. So yeah, like a lot of people who are writing it with it, I think, speak truth to blackness, speak truth to queerness, and you know, talk about experience in a way that feels just honest, and sometimes it's like terrifying, or it's tragic, or it's funny, or whatever, but it's like real. And for me, anytime a writer tells the truth, I feel inspired. So yeah, on the craft level, I have to say like Nafisa Thompson Spires, she does some cool shit. She's real.
What's one of her books?
Heads of the Color People.
So funny.
Yeah, I love her stuff. Yeah, she's just real cool. Like anyone who's doing things that I'm like, oh shit, that's cool. That's like, I'm like, oh yeah, be inspired.
When you were talking about like a book-length essay, it made me think of Andrea Long Chu's Women, where like I feel like she does such a beautiful job taking kind of like an obscure text that I would have no interest in reading myself, but she like writes about it in this like really funny, personable, approachable way that I love. So like it doesn't feel like scholarship is like high in an ivory tower of academia. She's just sort of like, I'm trying to figure out like how to be a person in the world through books, which I think like as a writer and a reader, I find very relatable. And I just like love her irreverence. Like she's just ready to take anyone down. And I so admire that.
Can you imagine the feeling of knowing that she's reviewing one of your books? That would be like, oh.
My publisher was like, what's a dream list? And the top of my dream list was like, I want to be eviscerated by Andrea Long Chu. And they were all like, who is that?
That's so funny.
I feel like to do that though, you have to actually be good at what you do. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't be just talking shit and not be good at it.
Right.
Because that's embarrassing.
Yeah. I was really inspired by like ethnographies and anthologies of like butch relationships in Buffalo, New York in the 40s and 50s, especially like Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg, and then the anthology Boots of Leather, Slippers of Gold. I actually think, no, that's an ethnography. It's like compiled like interviews with people who lived in that time in this like working class community in Buffalo. And yeah, just sort of like reading oral histories, I think, was maybe not so inspiring in terms of like plot or anything like super tangible that ended up in the novel, but I think like setting a tone or a mood or like an aspirational sort of like a way of like being and thinking about relationships was really important for me.
How are we on time?
I think we can do like 2 more and close it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was like in middle school, my mom gave me my first copy of the David Sedaris book, which was like very early to be reading David Sedaris. But I didn't know that you could just like do an essay collection that was funny and that was just like kind of silly. Like I was reading it. My favorite chapter of the book is the one where he's like learning French, and the whole thing of it is just like how ridiculous French is. And I was like, this is great. I'm very like enthralled by this. So definitely he was one of them. My other one is weirdly Alice Munro, this like lady in Canada who's like 93, doesn't know that she's my personal deity. Like I think about her all the time. I'm in the current process of rereading a lot of her stuff because she just does very small things. So one magic trick she did for me was she described this girl who was going on her very first train ride to Toronto, to the big city, and a man, like the milkman, comes by, like pushing a cart, and she orders chocolate milk. It's the perfect day, and she sips the milk, and she realizes it's spoiled, but she takes another sip of it because she doesn't believe that her perfect day could betray her in any way. So it's like, but the milk has to be perfect, right? And so like little moments like that, I'm like, that's human, absolutely, yeah. Makes me want to write. So my next question, speaking of that, what are you reading right now?
Right now I'm reading Chain Gang All Stars by Nana. I'm not going to say this, but yes. It's really interesting. And also it's interesting to watch a like man write two lesbians. I'm not like super deep in, so I'm not like deep into their story yet, but I think it's like admirable that he decided to write queerness. So that was interesting. So yeah. I don't know if is there sex? I haven't seen it, so I don't know. You know, like okay, like
Is that like the final testing ground?
oh, 100%. I might have to write a letter and be like, sir, just to be clear,
This is how it happened.
literally.
I'm just finishing Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn.
So good.
I immediately bought Patsy. So I'm excited to read that next.
That's I'm obsessed with that. I was like, I can sidebar, but we're just.
I just finished today Boys Weekend by Maddie Lobchansky, which is this great graphic novel about like a trans feminine person being the best man at their like old guy friend's wedding, and they go to like this crazy like island that's like Las Vegas where like there are no laws, and then there's like a mysterious creature who is like dismembering people. So it's like both a journey of gender and love and friendship, and also like seeing people like decapitated by a tentacle.
And it's all drawing.
Yeah, it's just a graphic. Yeah, all drawings. And then I'm also in the middle of reading Middlemarch. So those are my two texts right now.
How long have you been in the middle of Middlemarch?
So
Is that an
yeah,
okay question?
I have a joke with my partner where I'm like, I'm almost done, and I'm like 20 pages in. We just went on vacation, and I was like, this is the perfect time to like read Middlemarch because I have no data, so I have to read Middlemarch, and I'm like, let's say I'm a quarter of the way through, but I will finish it.
I'm so sorry for my bar follow-up.
No. I will finish it. I'm gonna finish Middlemarch. But I love it. I really do love it. It just yeah, it's big.
I'm still reading Yellowface, which I still highly recommend. People don't know what it's about. It's a woman who's like college friend and writer rival dies in like a freak accident before her 30s, and she like steals her manuscript. A white woman steals a Chinese American woman's manuscript and like passes it off as her memoir. It's sort of like what ensues. I think it's really written in a beautiful way where it's narrated by the white woman, but you know, there's like no taking sides. Like one moment I'll be like, this woman's terrible, and the next moment I'm like, oh, like maybe I can empathize with her, and they're like, no, she's terrible.
That's how I feel watching The Ultimatum.
I'm like halfway through the finale. I had to leave to come to this event at a very pivotal moment. I just want to put like a no spoilers.
Yeah, no
That's
spoilers.
also what I was doing immediately prior.
Wait, does no one finish it?
No.
Oh.
Do we need like a follow-up?
Yeah, I think we do.
I only know about this through tweets, but people seem traumatized.
It's,
Like people are just
it's not traumatizing, it's just unnecessarily messy. But if you watch like Ultimatum season 1, you knew that it was an unhinged situation.
Yeah.
But I will say this, I actually think that the queer people in season 2 are better behaved than season 1.
Yeah.
Because season 1 was just like deeply unhinged. Like it was real bad. Straight behaving very badly.
I also think the people on, like, I haven't seen season 1, but the people on season 2 who seem the most unhinged, I think about, and I'm like, actually you're having kind of a normal reaction to like an insane situation where you're living with someone that you've only known for a week.
No,
Like, and
that's
sleeping in the same bed. I'm like, at first I'm like really judgmental, and I'm like, no,
Yeah.
of course you're upset that this person won't like let you sleep in the bed with your dog.
You know, it's like Tips and the whole dog. I was like, please be so damn serious. Please be serious.
So good.
No, like Tips was like, I just like you don't care about my dog. I'm like, I don't know.
I
you.
feel
I feel like you hate. I'm like, okay, then call the ASPCA.
Yeah.
Like, what's up? Like call me.
The way
Like,
it's filmed, like from above, like rainy security.
it's just very weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel really uncomfortable with the amount of sex that they show. I'm like, did you guys know
Oh my
this?
God.
Did you sign
Yeah.
on? Like, is everyone okay?
This sounds terrific. I should watch it.
Yeah, everyone stop reading. No reason to read books.
Put down your books.
Watch them.
The Xander and Vanessa of it all, that was just the sex scenes with them is like very dark sided.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I can't wait.
It's bad.
But the last question, just between us debut authors, loosely speaking, whether you know or not, what do you think is next? Another book? Another project? What are we thinking?
It's not like a universal yes.
all
I'm
of
like,
us.
yeah, I would do it.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
I actually thought that like the writing part was so much more fun and interesting to me than like the publishing a book part, which is not what I expected. Like I'm like, oh, a lot of like writing stuff is taking up more of my time now, and I actually like miss having the writing time. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I kind of want things to be quiet and like.
Right. It
Get
does really
back.
make you miss writing, which is hard to do. So
Yeah.
I'll be writing another novel, I think.
Yeah, same. I'm working on 2 things at the same time.
Are both novels?
Yeah, one is like sadder than the other one. So like one is sad, and I know that it's sad and it's heavy. So then I'm like writing something fun to
Right.
compensate.
And
for
then like
that.
any
That's
mood
my
you're
goal.
in, you can
Yeah.
kind of work on something.
Do you think they'll both see the light of day, or are you gonna like have to like choose?
They both have to see the light of day. I don't do anything. I don't do anything unless like it's going to happen. Like yeah, I don't like write for fun. Like you know, like, oh I write. Like I think it was Hanif Abdul-Rakib who was talking about how like he has this like long like essay length notes app thing that he like does at the beginning of every year. Like he just like writes his observations, and I'm like I love that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all well and good. I'm a public scholar. I'm not, like, maybe it's because I'm a Virgo, but I'm like, I cannot waste my time. Like, I wrote 75,000 words, and I'm supposed to just be like, we're gonna make this work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
I have to see it through.
absolutely.
Because I'm like, I'm not. No, absolutely not. But yeah. So hopefully they will see the light of day. I intend on that.
I guess the funny thing about writing a book is like when it comes out, you're so sick of it, and you've like read it 5 billion times and you kind of hate it.
Yep.
So I think the thing that I was thinking about as I was like in the process of like publishing and preparing for publishing, like I was like, why can't I just like talk to everyone about bugs? So I learned about this caterpillar in New Zealand called the gumleaf skeletonizer, which is a wild
Oh, hell
caterpillar. Yeah, very metal name. It is invasive. It's like not doing good things to the trees there, but it's very cool. And when it molts, like you know, the classic like hungry caterpillar, it's eating, it's molting, it's getting bigger. After each molt, normally caterpillars will like eat the skin that they molted so that they can get those nutrients back, and that predators won't be like, there was a caterpillar here, like I see the little trail. Normally they eat their entire molt, but this caterpillar eats everything except for the head, and then it puts its old head on top of its new head,
Oh, yes.
and it can do this up to like 5, like it molts like 5 or 6 times, like by the time it's like about to become a moth, it has like this whole like tapering tower of heads on top of it.
Well, I guess like, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And so is that also going to be like memoir adjacent too?
I think I'm incapable of writing about animals without also being like writing about me.
Right.
So yeah, ideally I think it'll have like less memoir, but I think, I don't know, I'm like, I just want to write about being gay as well. So if the bugs are not going to do that, then I have to bring that into the story.
I'm so excited to see your angle into the gummy
Yeah.
skeleton.
So what
Where's
about
their
the
heads on
swords
their head?
The swords?
Yeah.
I guess I have to bring that as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
It's all coming together. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Although a lot of bugs, like, they do have sex by like stabbing their penis. Like a male bug will stab its penis into the
That book's
female.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like making the bugs can bring their own swords.
Yeah. I hate that I know that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess with
That
that,
feels like the right note to end on.
wear your old head on your head. With that, I guess we could open up for Q&A.
Love
This
it.
dog better have.
You know?
She thirsty.
Yes.
Hi, thanks so much. I love this. I'm from New Zealand, so fascinating to hear about that. Also, I haven't heard more of Pierce's name in so long, but those books literally got me through high school. So my question is for everyone. I'm always very intrigued by the process of starting, and like I hear some authors suddenly have like a character in their head that won't leave them alone. They just start writing. I haven't had that experience myself, and so I'm interested. You know, like how did you write down a whole narrative? You knew where your book was going beforehand, or what was the process?
It's a good question. I feel like for me the plot always comes last, and it is always like a detail or a character or an interaction or something that will spark like that sense of like I just need to like start writing something, and then the plot can kind of just you know, it'll work out in whatever way. But it's not usually like a story. It's usually, like a detail that I can't stop thinking about.
I mean, I think for the other two things that I'm working on, they got outlined before anything else, but like not intentionally. It was just like it all came to me. But with Homebodies, it was kind of like a light in a dark room. Like I knew it just kind of started to illuminate itself, and it was like it started with one scene, and then the world just started to build itself around. And I didn't really know all of how it was going to look before we got there. I would argue I didn't even really know Mickey. Like I just kind of was like, okay, here she is. She's in this situation. Okay, then So I kind of started to like understand her psychologically, and then this plot kind of evolved from there. I think I'll always kind of be doing these like slight character study vibes. Like the plot is not really ever the point for me, but
Yeah, unfortunately for me, the character I get really frustrated with myself. When I'm writing, like I'm working on my second essay collection, which is like from my point of view about my history. And so in writing this one essay, I've had to stop several times and be like, am I a bad person? Like what's going on here? It's a very like tricky essay to pull off. It was from many, many years ago. I was like closeted in a closeted relationship with my best friend from high school. We were doing a road trip to Santa Fe. I was like just in college, like a freshman. And at the time, my mom was undergoing chemo with this turquoise necklace. I really wanted to get her something. So I'm thinking about my mom a lot during this trip and confronting this notion of like weirdly being frustrated that she's in this period where she's like losing her hair, she's very frail, she's very weak. And so my mom previously to that had always been this very fierce, intense, like traditional Mexican mom, like no nonsense, I'm gonna turn your world upside down, mister, like that kind of thing, you know? And so this feeling of like almost wanting that person and resenting this new person in my life who I don't know that well, but it's my mom and she's sick. So like all these weird feelings are coming up and I'm having to like basically take solace in plotting the essay out and be like, here's where I know there's a resolution coming, because if I don't know there's a resolution at the end of it, I'm like, I don't like this person who is myself in this essay right now. And so sometimes plot structure can be that. It can be like, okay, I promise there's light at the end of the tunnel, just like keep writing this part because you'll get there eventually. And if I don't have that, I'll start to feel like, oh my god, what's wrong with me?
I feel like to your point though, like what you're talking about, though, you're telling the truth.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that telling that story will be someone else will sit there and be like, okay, yeah, I'm not
Right.
like not I'm not a bad person, I'm just a human being.
Right.
And like that's real. You know? I think like when we frame things in these like very in some ways like palatable to other people and like writing perfect characters, even when like that perfect character is supposed to be yourself, like I think it almost pressures other people to continue to try
Right.
to aspire to that.
Yeah.
So I'm
Trying
sure
to
it
like
helps people.
moralize in that way is not helpful to art, I think, sometimes, where it's just like, yeah, this is how humans behave, and sometimes I have to like get rid of those voices on like the pretend social media in my brain that's like, they're gonna hate this, they're gonna be so mad at me, but
Yeah.
you can't do that while
I'm
you're
sorry to
writing.
sound like a broken record, but like read Yellowface. It's all about like reading your Goodreads reviews, like being controlled by people on Twitter and what
Okay.
they have to say. I was
That's
like,
also scary.
scary but wonderful. I was when you were talking about being hung up on details. I haven't written fiction, but I feel like the details I get hung up on are actually like often real things that like surprise and confuse me, and I often like find that I start writing in response to them. Like this book started because I was like, oh, I'm like a baby gay and I'm going to learn about Stonewall because like that's what you're supposed to do, and then I got so distracted by the mention of this like lesbian memoir also called The Stonewall that was like mentioned as like a footnote on like the 7th page of this like big history of Stonewall. So I feel like at first I didn't feel like I was writing. I was like, oh, I'm just like researching and I'm like weirdly obsessed with this woman who lived at the turn of the century. And then I feel like the writing became like, oh, it was almost like a way of reading and responding to that detail.
It's very gay, by the way.
Yeah, I'm like, yes, these are all my like gay dead friends
Yeah.
who I'm weirdly in love with, but they're gone. Any other?
So for you both, but also just in general for you all, but I love personal essay writing. And I took a class once where a professor told me, you know, there's so much truth to your voice, to what you're saying, but also knowing to like limit when, you know, there's too much out there of yourself. And so I was just wondering how you like going through just like writing what you know about yourself and your experiences, but also what you don't really want to put out there, and knowing what the boundaries are, like
Yeah.
how much is too much, and like how do you decide that for yourself?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question and one that I thought about a lot during the publication process. And I think when I finally had my manuscript mostly done, I just sort of did a read, and I just like anytime I was like I had a little, I just cut it. And I really am, a lot of the essays in my book were published earlier on the internet as like 2,000 words, like how blank made me blank, classic genre. And I think it was like really helpful to have those sort of earlier models, because it made me realize that essays, like you can have multiple versions of a singular essay, and some of those versions, like maybe they're just written for you, and like they live on your computer, and like they help you sort of come to the essential truth of the essay, but like you don't need all of those details or those memories like in the piece that you share with other people. And I also I sent all of the sections that were like about someone very specific who was named, to sort of like get their opinion, or like just sort of like run that by them. And I just ultimately realized, like, I think the biggest anxiety I had was like sharing details from other people's lives, because it's like they are not like, this is like my book, and I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. So yeah, I think it was like both a process of sort of cutting and like realizing also, like, especially in writing about like traumatic incidents, like an essay isn't necessarily made better by like sharing every detail like of the incident, or sharing all of like my feelings or my emotions. Like that, I think you can share what you want in an essay, and like the truth can still be there, and I think it can help sort of do those bigger drafts at first and then cut it down.
Yeah, for what Sabrina said, I mean, every essay is so prismatic and can exist in so many different ways that I almost feel like...
Did you have any crisis of confidence, like just getting the gumption to do it? Was that a thing for you or not?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like you have to have some audacity to say it. Like, people want to hear what I have to say, right? Like, I think for me, I hadn't really, the book that I was writing, I hadn't really read something exactly like it, which is, I guess, why I thought that I should write it. Like, and in doing that, I was like, are people going to care about this? Is anyone going to want to read this story? Does anyone care about what I have to say? Can I write? Do I know how to write? Like, this is not, I just had a lot of different crises, like lots of existential crises. I remember being in therapy once and crying and just being like, why am I trying to write a metaphor about a pigeon? This is so fucking stupid. I'm very dramatic. I just, I think that it's a lot of, I think we all have those thoughts. Because I think if we didn't have those thoughts, then we would just be like, I don't know if you've ever seen there's like this very slice that, right? This show on Apple TV, I think it was Apple TV, where it was like Will Ferrell and Steve Carell, and they're like in this weird therapist relationship, he's like abusing him or whatever. But like one of the things that he does is he has Will Ferrell like take down he dictates to him like a 7-part series of this detective novel, and he's like, this is the best thing ever. Like, I am so good at this. Like, I am so that thing never saw the light of day. Like, I think if you don't have anxiety, you're not doing it right. Because I think, again, if you're telling the truth, you're going to say something that's uncomfortable, or you're going to say something that's awkward, or you're going to try to, like, swing, or if you're going to write something ambitious, you're going to take a big swing and be like, can I pull this off? There's a lot of things. And for me, I think I'm always very concerned about, like, is this coming across the way that I want it to? Like, is the message being communicated? Am I doing enough? Am I saying enough? Are my intentions being read? Gratefully, thankfully, like the response that I've heard back suggests that that's the case, but when you're like in a dark room writing by yourself or like whatever, that doesn't always make itself super clear. Like I at least want the intention to like make it to the page, and so there's a lot of anxiety about that happening for me.
Yeah, I also had like a very like protective sense of confidence while I was writing, so it didn't seem like such a big deal, and I think I had to believe that it would be okay, and that's kind of how I finished the book. But then all of the anxiety came after, when it was time to like actually share it with people, and terrified of like judgment and criticism and all of that. So that part actually felt like more of a hurdle. I think like the sharing it felt like a bigger sort of challenge than the writing itself.
I enjoy the exact level of delusional I'm at right now. I think I shouldn't like be any more or less delusional. Like I am delusional enough to be like, people want to hear what I have to say, and I can say it well. but I also have enough like wherewithal to be concerned to be like, okay, but we should do it, the right way. We should really put a lot of effort into it. Learn new techniques. We should read a lot, etc. So I'm really well balanced at the moment, but like that's just right now. I'm really afraid of the
You said
future.
right now,
Like right today.
In this exact moment.
Exactly today. Yes.
Watching The Ultimatum is gonna fuck you up.
The delicate balance.
I know, you're gonna tip.
Yeah, something's gonna.
I feel like sometimes also like if you read a writer who's like real good at writing, you're like, damn it, never
Yeah.
mind.
There were some books that I was like, I'm not allowed to read this. Until, like people would recommend me things. Like I described my project and someone was like, oh, you should read like Carmen Maria Machado's In the Dream House, and I like read the first sentence and I was like, this is for later.
No,
so much
actually.
respect, but like I'm just gonna feel bad about myself.
Right.
No, literally.
One of my friends has like her PhD in biology, like microbiology, like studying cells, and we've never been able to like communicate well about what we do, except for weirdly in this process because she has to like present a lot of papers and like is invited to different universities to speak, and she's like, I always feel like such a fraud, like who's gonna want to know what I have to say? And then she told me, she's like, I tell myself like, oh, it's not me, like it's not personal, I'm speaking on behalf of like the science or the research that I've done. And I think like that was the most helpful advice I got of a thing that I channeled where I'm like, okay, like at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about me, but like there are like a lot of stories of other lesbians in my book, and like I'm trying to like, share something that's not like just me and my thoughts and a judgment of me, but like there is something I'm trying to get across, and so I have to like be brave, like on behalf of them. Or, like I tricked
Right.
myself that way into carrying on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's that way of thinking like, well, it's the work, and I'm
Yeah.
over here, and then the work is sort of speaking, and that's
Oh,
helpful for me as well.
I'm like so curious how you feel about both of you having written sort of some like memoir essays. Like there was a part of memoir that found its way into my book, but since it's come out, I'm like, that's not me anymore. Like that's like very much a character, and I can like talk about her, but I've
Yeah.
evolved, and like it feels like that version of me is also over there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you two feel like any distance. That's
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first was pitched, when I was taking the book and shopping it to different editors, I felt very resistant to anyone who was like, this is a memoir. I was like, it's an essay collection! And they were like, okay. And now that I have written the essay collection, it's a memoir, and I think I felt like all those hangups because I was like, oh, it's like feels so selfish, like to want people to read about my life, like cringe. But that was what I had to write, and that's what I wrote. And I think that the most helpful thing, frankly, was going to therapy and talking to my therapist for hours and hours and hours about this question, where she was like, okay, okay, is this a real problem? But I think it was just like it felt nice just to be able to write it and to know like this is the only thing that I care about writing right now, and so like that has to be enough. And absolutely like revisiting it both in copy edits and now like even when I do readings, I'm like, oh, that is a past self. Like we will put that away. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll do readings. I never reread this book unless I'm doing readings. I'll be reading it loud, and I'm like, oh, you're bad.
now I'm like, what's the sign?
Oh.
Virgo.
Amber. Leo Moon. Taurus rising.
Virgo.
I'm a Gemini, also Taurus rising.
Oh, wow. Cancer.
That is so obvious. We do a lot of that.
Pisces.
That makes a lot of sense as well.
I'm
Yeah.
a fish.
Yeah. I'm a Scorpio.
Okay.
Twice over.
Okay.
Sun and moon. I'm so sorry. There's a lot of water action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In books, probably. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more quick one,
One more.
if there is one. If not, then
Also
let's-
feels appropriate to end on our side.
Yeah.
Pride.
Let's let that,
Yeah.
sit in for a minute. Let's give all of these wonderful authors a round of applause. Thank you all again so much for coming out tonight. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. Thank you to JP for moderating such a wonderful conversation. And thank you to everyone for joining us to wrap up our wonderful Pride Fest today. So just a quick reminder, if you're still with us on the YouTube live stream, you can buy these wonderful authors' books by clicking the link in the live stream description. For those who are here with us tonight, you can buy copies from us at the front register where you checked in. I can say of the books from this list that I've read, they've all been amazing. The ones that I haven't are at the top of my list, and I'm sure the other booksellers have read. They're all fantastic. Highly recommend checking them out, and the authors will be around to sign them. So that's really fun and exciting. And I think that's all I have to say. Let's give these folks one last round of applause.